footsteps echoed in the marble halls, but she wasn't afraid. She breached the most heavily guarded estate in Chicago, not to steal millions, but to reclaim a stolen life. What Harper found inside Leonardo's mansion didn't end in her execution. Instead, it shattered the entire criminal underworld forever. Midnight draped over the sprawling Sheridan Road estate like a velvet shroud. Harper Bell crouched behind the manicured hemlock hedges, her breath forming faint white clouds in the biting Illinois cold. She was 22, forged in the harsh fires of the Cook County foster system, and she had nothing left to lose. 3 months ago, her younger sister Lily had vanished without a trace. The Chicago Police Department had stamped "runaway" on the file and buried it in a dusty cabinet, but Harper knew better. Lily wouldn't leave her. A discarded burner phone and a string of encrypted texts had pointed Harper to one undeniable, terrifying destination: the Campagna family. Leonardo Campagna wasn't just a mobster, he was a phantom. At 32, he had inherited the largest illicit empire in the Midwest. His legitimate fronts, real estate logistics, and private security were impenetrable, but his underworld reach was absolute. Harper had spent the last 90 days studying his Lake Forest mansion. She learned the rotation of the armed perimeter guards, the blind spots in the thermal imaging cameras, and the exact 3-minute window when the security feed looped during the server backup. At 2 a.m., she slipped over the wrought iron gate, landing silently on the frost-covered grass. Dressed entirely in matte black, she moved like a shadow against the limestone walls of the mansion. Reaching the east wing, she expertly picked the mechanical lock on the conservatory door, a glaring oversight she had noted from stolen architectural blueprints. The glass door clicked open. Harper slipped inside, immediately surrounded by the cloying scent of rare orchids and damp earth. Navigating the cavernous hallways required absolute precision. Every step was calculated. She bypassed the grand foyer, her eyes fixed on the heavy mahogany doors of Leonardo's private study at the end of the corridor. According to her research, the safe hidden behind his desk contained the ledgers for his human trafficking ring, the ring she believed swallowed Lily. Harper eased the study door open. The room was bathed in the pale light of the moon, filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. The smell of aged leather scotch and expensive cigar smoke hung heavy in the air. She moved swiftly to the wall behind the desk, running her fingers along the wood paneling until she found the hidden seam. Just as she withdrew her lock-picking kit, a sound froze the blood in her veins. The unmistakable metallic slide of a Glock 19 chambering around. "Most thieves go for the art," a voice murmured from the shadows. It was deep resonant and entirely too calm. "It takes a specific kind of idiocy to break into my home for paperwork." A lamp clicked on. Harper spun around. Sitting in a wingback chair in the corner of the room, swirling a glass of amber liquid, was Leonardo Campagna. He was impeccably dressed in a dark tailored suit, his tie discarded top buttons undone. His features were sharply aristocratic, high cheekbones, a strong jawline, and eyes as dark and unforgiving as obsidian. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a CEO who authorized executions between board meetings. Harper's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced her chin up. "I'm not here for your money." Leonardo took a slow sip of his scotch, his gaze raking over her. He noted her cheap tactical gear, the desperate set of her jaw, and the complete lack of a weapon in her hands. "Clearly, you bypassed $3 million in security, outmaneuvered 4 armed guards, and picked a Medico lock to stare at a wooden panel. Who sent you? Was it Dante?" "No one sent me." Harper spat out her voice, remarkably steady. "I'm here for Lily. Lily Bell." Leonardo's expression remained an impenetrable mask, though a flicker of genuine confusion crossed his eyes. I don't know who that is, and I'm losing my patience. Give me a reason not to put a bullet between your eyes. Right now. She's 19. Blonde hair, green eyes. Harper stepped forward, completely ignoring the gun leveled at her chest. She disappeared on October 14th near Rush Street. The last ping from her phone traced back to a warehouse owned by Apex Logistics. Your company, so don't sit there and play dumb. Where is she? For a long moment, the study was dead silent. The grandfather clock ticked rhythmically. Leonardo slowly lowered the weapon, resting it on the arm of his chair. He scrutinized her face, searching for a lie, but finding only an agonizing raw grief. Apex Logistics. Leonardo repeated softly, his tone shifting from amused to lethally cold. Apex Logistics was shuttered 2 years ago. The property was transferred. Transferred to who? Harper demanded, her voice rising. To a subsidiary managed by Dante Caruso, Leonardo said, his eyes narrowing as the pieces clicked into place. Dante was his cousin, a volatile underboss who had been challenging Leonardo's authority for the past year. If Dante was using old Campagna properties to run unsanctioned operations, specifically operations involving civilian girls, it meant Dante was orchestrating a coup right under Leonardo's nose. Leonardo stood up. He towered over her, radiating a quiet, suffocating danger. He walked around the desk, stopping just inches away from Harper. She refused to back down, meeting his deadly stare with an inferno of her own. You have a death wish. Harper Bell. He whispered, his proximity overwhelming. You walked into the lion's den without a weapon, looking for a ghost. I don't care if I die, she whispered back, tears of frustration finally pricking her eyes. I just want to know what happened to her. Leonardo stared at her. In his world, people begged, cried, and bargained for their lives. No one had ever looked at him with such absolute defiance. A dangerous, calculated plan began to form in his mind. He needed to expose Dante, but he couldn't move against his own blood without undeniable proof, lest he spark an all-out syndicate war. He needed bait. He needed a wild card. I didn't take your sister, Leonardo said quietly. But I know who did, and if you want to find her, you're going to help me destroy him. Harper stared at him, trying to process the magnitude of his words. The man she had spent months hunting, the man she was convinced was a monster, was offering her an alliance, or worse, setting a trap. Why should I believe a single word you say? Harper shot back, her fists clenched at her sides. Leonardo turned his back on her, walking toward the large windows, overlooking the dark, sprawling estate. Because if I were lying, you would already be dead. My men would be burying you in the woods behind this house, and I would be finishing my scotch. He spoke with a chilling matter-of-factness that made Harper's stomach drop. Dante Caruso is my underboss. He has been operating a shadow faction within my family. If he took your sister through the Apex warehouse, he is running an illegal trafficking ring on my territory without my sanction. That is a direct threat to my leadership. He turned back to face her. I want him dismantled. You want your sister. Our interests align. So what? We team up. Harper scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. I'm a barista who grew up in group homes, and you're the head of the Chicago Mafia. What could I possibly do for you? You are invisible, Leonardo stated, walking back to his desk. My circle is compromised. I don't know who is loyal to me and who is taking payouts from Dante. You, however, are a complete unknown. You broke into my fortress. You have skills. You are desperate. I can use that. Use me how? Dante is hosting a charity gala at the Drake Hotel next week. It's a front to launder money and meet with his international buyers. I need someone to infiltrate his private suite during the event, clone his hard drives, and find the shipping manifests. Leonardo explained, his dark eyes locking onto hers. If your sister is still alive, her location will be in those manifests. But you won't survive getting close to him as a street rat in tactical gear. You need to belong there. Harper swallowed hard. Belong there? You will stay here, Leonardo commanded, gesturing to the sprawling mansion. You will be seen as my guest. My companion. Dante is arrogant, but he is observant. If I bring a mysterious new woman into my inner circle, he will be distracted, trying to figure out who you are and what leverage you hold. While he is focused on the illusion, you will steal the reality. You're holding me prisoner, she realized, her pulse skyrocketing. I am offering you sanctuary, he corrected smoothly. Walk out that door, Harper and Dante's men will find you before sunrise. You've kicked a hornet's nest. You accessed Apex. They are already tracking you. Staying with me is the only way you survive long enough to save Lily. Harper's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to run to escape the suffocating presence of this man who controlled everything he touched. But the memory of Lily's laughter, the guilt of not protecting her, anchored her to the floor. If Leonardo was telling the truth, this was her only shot. Fine, Harper breathed, her voice trembling slightly before she steadied it. I'll do it. But we do this on one condition. Leonardo raised an eyebrow, genuinely amused. You are not in a position to negotiate, little ghost. If I find the manifests, and if Dante has her... Harper stepped closer, her green eyes blazing with a ferocity that caught Leonardo completely off guard. I get to pull the trigger. Silence stretched between them. The sheer audacity of this small, battered girl demanding the right to execute a Mafia underboss was staggering. Slowly, a slow, predatory smirk curved Leonardo's lips. Deal, he murmured. He pressed a button under his desk. Less than 10 seconds later, the study doors swung open and 2 massive men in tailored suits stepped inside. Harper tensed, her combat instincts flaring, but Leonardo raised a single hand, stopping them in their tracks. This is Harper, Leonardo announced, his voice echoing with absolute authority. She is a guest of the house. Prepare the suite adjacent to mine. If anyone disrespects her, or if she comes to any harm, I will hold you personally responsible. Am I understood? The men nodded, immediately masking their shock. Yes, boss. Show her to her room, Leonardo instructed, before turning his dark gaze back to Harper. Get some sleep, Miss Bell. Tomorrow, your education begins. The next morning, Harper awoke in a room larger than any apartment she had ever lived in. The walls were adorned with silk wallpaper, and the bed felt like a cloud, but when she walked to the window, she saw the reality of her situation. 2 armed guards patrolled the gardens below. It was a gilded cage. Over the next few days, the lines between hostage and partner began to blur. Leonardo proved to be a harsh, exacting teacher. He hired stylists to transform her outward appearance, outfitting her in designer gowns and diamonds, but behind closed doors, he trained her himself. He taught her how to pick high-security digital locks, how to memorize alphanumeric encryption keys under pressure, and how to fire a Walther PPK with deadly accuracy. During late-night training sessions in the mansion's underground shooting range, the physical proximity between them crackled with an unspoken tension. Once, as he corrected her stance, his chest pressed firmly against her back, his hands guiding her arms. Breathe, he had murmured, his breath ghosting over her ear, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine. Anger makes you sloppy. Channel it. Make it cold. Harper had fired, hitting the dead center of the target. She had turned to look at him, finding his gaze already fixed on her lips, before he abruptly stepped away. His jaw clenched. She realized then that Leonardo Campagna wasn't just a cold-blooded killer. He was a man fighting a war on two fronts, one against his treacherous cousin, and one against the dangerous magnetic pull he felt toward the orphaned girl who had broken into his life. As the night of the gala approached, the stakes grew astronomically high. Harper was no longer just fighting for her sister. She was descending into the dark, seductive abyss of the Mafia, and Leonardo was pulling her down with him. And the most terrifying part wasn't that she might die, it was that she was beginning to trust him. Champagne flutes clinked amidst the deafening hum of high society. But to Harper, the opulent ballroom of the Drake Hotel felt like a beautifully decorated slaughterhouse. She stood beside Leonardo, clad in a floor-length emerald silk gown that clung to her curves, a distraction fabricated by a master manipulator. A diamond choker rested heavy against her collarbone, a tracking device masquerading as a priceless family heirloom. Leonardo rested a possessive hand on the small of her back. His touch was a branding iron, signaling to every mob boss politician and crooked judge in the room that she was his territory. "Keep your breathing even," Leonardo murmured, his lips barely brushing her ear as he leaned in, projecting the image of a smitten lover. "Dante is approaching from your left. 3 o'clock. Smile, Harper. Make him wonder what I see in you." Harper forced a brilliant, empty smile as Dante Caruso materialized from the crowd. Dante was a sharp contrast to Leonardo's cold, calculated stillness. He was aggressively charismatic, with slicked-backed dark hair, a flashy bespoke suit, and a predatory grin that didn't reach his dead shark-like eyes. "Leo," Dante greeted, extending a hand adorned with a heavy gold signet ring. "I was beginning to think you were boycotting my little charity event." "I wouldn't miss it, Dante," Leonardo replied smoothly, ignoring the extended hand, and instead taking 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter. He handed one to Harper. "I brought someone who appreciates the finer things. Harper, meet my cousin Dante." Dante's eyes raked over her, shedding any pretense of politeness. He looked at her not as a person, but as an asset to be appraised. "A pleasure, Harper. Leonardo rarely shares his acquisitions. You must be very special." "He just has excellent taste," Harper replied smoothly, her voice laced with a cool arrogance she didn't know she possessed. She sipped the champagne, holding Dante's gaze. "Though I hear you have quite the collection of hidden treasures yourself, Mr. Caruso. Art logistics? Imports?" A muscle twitched in Dante's jaw. The veiled reference to his shadow operations landed exactly as Leonardo had intended. Dante's attention was now thoroughly locked on this unknown woman who seemed to know entirely too much. "I dabble," Dante said, his smile tightening. "Excuse me. I have guests to entertain. Enjoy the gala, Leo." As Dante melted back into the crowd, Leonardo's hand tightened briefly on Harper's waist. "Perfectly executed. He's rattled. He'll be spending the next hour trying to run your face through his facial recognition databases. It's time." Harper nodded, her pulse accelerating. She slipped away toward the grand staircase, moving with purposeful grace. Avoiding the security cameras, just as Leonardo had taught her, she navigated the labyrinthine upper corridors of the hotel until she reached the penthouse suite. 2 armed guards flanked the mahogany doors. Harper didn't hesitate. She played the part of the heavily intoxicated entitled guest, stumbling slightly and giggling as she approached them. "Excuse me, boys," she slurred, leaning heavily against the wall. "I think I dropped my earring in the powder room up here earlier. Mr. Campagna is going to be furious." The guards exchanged a look. The mention of Leonardo's name made them hesitate, but Dante's orders were absolute. "No entry, miss. You need to go back downstairs." "Oh, come on," Harper whined, stepping closer. As the guard reached out to gently push her back, Harper's demeanor shifted from drunk to lethal in a fraction of a second. She drove the heel of her stiletto into the top of the first guard's foot, shattering the delicate metatarsal bones. As he doubled over in agony, she struck the second guard in the throat with a rigid hand, collapsing his windpipe. Before the first guard could recover, she deployed the small, high-voltage taser concealed in her evening clutch, dropping him to the carpeted floor. Breathing heavily, she stepped over their unconscious bodies and approached the keypad. She pulled a tiny thermal scanner from her clutch, revealing the heat signatures of the most recently pressed numbers. 4927. The heavy door clicked open. Inside Dante's suite was a temporary command center. Laptops and encrypted servers hummed on the dining table. Harper moved quickly, plugging a customized decryption drive into the primary terminal. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 20%, 50%. She frantically scanned the open files. Shipping routes, bribes to port authorities. And then she found it, a folder labeled Apex Transit. She clicked it open. Her heart stopped. It was a roster of names, ages, and physical descriptions, human cargo. Halfway down the list, staring back at her in cold, clinical black and white, was Lily Bell. The column next to Lily's name didn't list a price. It listed a status priority transit. Departure, 2300 hours. Navy Pier berth, 14. Harper checked her watch. It was 10:15 p.m. They were moving her tonight. The computer chimed. Download complete. She yanked the drive free, but as she turned toward the door, a massive figure blocked her path. It was Rocco Dante's chief enforcer, a brutal man with a scarred face and a drawn, suppressed pistol. "Dante thought there was something off about you," Rocco sneered, raising the weapon. "Looks like he was right." Harper didn't freeze. Leonardo's training kicked in. "Make it cold." She dove behind the heavy oak desk just as a bullet tore through the silk of her dress, embedding itself in the wall. She drew the Walter PPK, strapped to her thigh beneath the gown. She popped up from the side of the desk, firing 2 rapid shots. The first missed, shattering a vase. The second caught Rocco in the shoulder, spinning him backward. He roared in pain, his gun clattering to the floor. Harper didn't wait to see if he would get back up. She sprinted for the door, bursting out of the suite and flying down the service elevator stairs. She hit the ground floor running, scanning the crowd until she found Leonardo. He read the sheer panic in her eyes immediately. He abandoned his conversation with a city alderman, meeting her halfway across the lobby. "They're moving her tonight," Harper gasped, shoving the encrypted drive into his hand. "Navy Pier. We have less than 45 minutes. Leonardo's eyes hardened. He didn't ask questions. He pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket, dialing a secure line. "Bring the assault teams to berth, 14. Lethal force authorized. We are taking Dante down tonight." The tires of Leonardo's armored Maybach screamed against the wet asphalt as they tore through the deserted streets of downtown Chicago. Harper sat in the passenger seat, her hands trembling slightly as she reloaded her Walter. She had stripped off the restricting emerald gown, revealing the black tactical clothing she had worn underneath. "When we get there," Leonardo said, his voice slicing through the heavy silence of the car, "you stay behind me. Dante's men are heavily armed, and they have nothing to lose. If they see you, they will use you to get to me." "I'm not staying behind, Leonardo," Harper said fiercely, locking a fresh magazine into place. "That's my sister. We had a deal. I get to pull the trigger." Leonardo glanced at her. The streetlights illuminated the fierce, unyielding determination in her eyes. She was no longer the desperate orphan who had broken into his mansion. She was a warrior, forged in the crucible of his own making. "Keep your head down," was all he said. They arrived at Navy Pier just as the assault began. The sound of automatic gunfire shattered the quiet night. Leonardo's loyalists had surrounded Berth, 14 engaging Dante's shadow faction in a brutal, uncompromising firefight. Cargo containers formed a steel maze, flashing with the strobe of muzzle flares. Leonardo moved with terrifying efficiency. He was a phantom of violence, neutralizing threats with precise, calculated shots as he cleared a path for Harper. They wove through the stacks of shipping containers, following the coordinates from the cloned drive. At the edge of the pier, a heavy transport yacht idled in the dark water. And there, standing on the boarding ramp with a gun pressed to the temple of a terrified blonde teenager, was Dante Caruso. "Lily!" Harper screamed, stepping out from the cover of a steel container. "Harper! Oh my God, Harper!" Lily sobbed, struggling against Dante's vicious grip. "Drop the weapon, Dante," Leonardo commanded, stepping out beside Harper. His Glock was leveled flawlessly at his cousin's chest. "It's over. Your buyers are dead. Your men are surrendering. You have nowhere to run." Dante laughed, a frantic, unhinged sound that echoed off the water. He was bleeding from a graze on his cheek, his bespoke suit ruined. "You think you've won, Leo? You think you're the hero here?" He sneered, looking at Harper. "Do you know who built the Apex pipeline, little girl? Do you know who pioneered the routes I'm using? It was him. His father started it, and Leonardo profited from it for years before he developed a conscience and shut it down. He's no better than me." Harper froze, her gun wavering slightly as she looked at Leonardo. The accusation hung heavy in the damp air. Leonardo didn't flinch, nor did he take his eyes off Dante. "My father was a monster, Dante. That is why I killed him and took the throne. I shut the human trades down because they are an abomination. You resurrected them because you are weak, greedy, and incapable of true leadership." Dante roared in fury, shifting his aim from Lily toward Leonardo. But in that split second of distraction, his grip on the teenager loosened. "Lily, drop!" Harper screamed. Lily miraculously obeyed, dropping all her body weight and sagging out of Dante's grasp. The sudden movement threw Dante off balance. Harper didn't hesitate. She remembered the cold, dark, underground range. She remembered Leonardo's chest against her back, his voice telling her to channel her anger. She raised her. Walter exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The gunshot rang out, singular and deafening. Dante staggered backward, a blossoming red stain spreading across the center of his chest. He looked down in disbelief, then back up at Harper, his eyes wide. Without another word, he collapsed backward off the ramp, plunging into the dark, churning waters of Lake Michigan. He didn't resurface. Silence descended on the pier, broken only by the lapping of the waves and Lily's desperate sobbing. Harper dropped her weapon and ran, falling to her knees on the steel ramp as she gathered her sister into her arms. She buried her face in Lily's blonde hair, crying tears of absolute, profound relief. Leonardo stood a few feet away, slowly lowering his weapon. He watched Harper hold her sister, a strange, unfamiliar tightness gripping his chest. He had spent his entire life building walls, amassing power to protect himself from a world that only knew betrayal. Yet this girl had breached his fortress, dismantled his defenses, and stood by his side in a war she didn't have to fight. After several minutes, Harper slowly pulled away from Lily, ensuring she was unharmed. Leonardo's men emerged from the shadows, securing the area and throwing warm blankets around the shivering teenager. Harper stood up and walked over to Leonardo. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, but she stood tall. "He's dead," Harper said quietly. "You kept your end of the deal." Leonardo replied, his dark eyes searching hers. "Your sister is safe. I will set you both up with new identities, a home far away from Chicago, and enough money to ensure you never have to look over your shoulders again. You're free, Harper. Harper looked at the man who had kidnapped her, trained her, and ultimately helped save the only family she had left. She realized that going back to a normal life, serving coffee and pretending the monsters didn't exist, was impossible. She had tasted the darkness, and she had survived it. More than that, she had found an equal in the most dangerous man in the city. "What if I don't want to leave?" she asked softly, stepping into his space. Leonardo's breath hitched a rare crack in his impenetrable armor. "Harper, this world, it will consume you. I broke into your world, Leonardo," she whispered, reaching up to rest a hand against his jaw. "I think I can handle it. Besides, you just lost your underboss. You're going to need someone you can trust." Leonardo stared down at her, the last of his restraint snapping. He pulled her against him, kissing her with a fierce, consuming desperation that tasted of gunpowder and salvation. It was a promise sealed in the shadows of the criminal underworld. The orphan girl hadn't just broken into the Mafia boss's mansion. She had conquered his empire and claimed his heart. If you were captivated by this intense tale of loyalty, betrayal, and dark romance, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to share this thrilling Mafia drama with your friends who love a fierce heroine and a dangerous love story. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming real-life inspired storytelling videos. Leave a comment below. Would you have taken Leonardo's deal?